How hard is it to make a sandwich? Publicly a sandwich. My dog learns faster than you.
That's what a CEO, a real actual CEO, said to a black waitress, out loud, in a packed diner in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lunch rush. He snapped his fingers, twice, like calling a pet.
Sourdough. 4 syllables. Too many for you? You need me to spell it?
She looked at him, calm.
Sir, I wrote your order correctly. The kitchen made the error.
Fix it. Wonderful. Can you also fix your IQ while you're back there?
30 people heard every word. Not one stood up. Not one said a thing. But he didn't know. The quiet old woman in the corner booth had been watching every second. And what she did next? It cost him everything. But before we get to that satisfying moment, and trust me, it's coming, you need to understand who this waitress really is. Because what she did next? It only makes sense when you know what she was carrying. Her name is Yvette Taylor, 29 years old, single mom. 1 daughter, Nadia, 6 years old, obsessed with drawing and pancakes. Every single morning, Yvette's alarm goes off at 4:45. Not 5, not 5:15, 4:45. While the rest of Charlotte is still asleep, she's already up, moving through the dark. Quiet. Careful. Because Nadia is still curled up on the other side of the bed, and if that little girl wakes up before 6, getting her back to sleep is a whole mission. Their apartment is small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. The kind of place where the kitchen is also the living room, and the living room is also the study. But it's clean. Spotless, actually. Yvette keeps it that way because it's the one thing she can control. There's a folding table pushed against the wall. On it, a laptop with a cracked screen, a stack of printed coursework, and a highlighter with the cap chewed off. Yvette is 18 credits away from finishing her business degree online. 18 credits. She studies after Nadia falls asleep, usually between 10 p.m. and midnight, sometimes later. Sometimes she falls asleep at that table with the highlighter still in her hand. On the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a cupcake, there's a drawing Nadia made. 2 stick figures holding hands. 1 tall, 1 small. Underneath, in wobbly crayon letters, me and Mama. Next to it, a torn piece of notebook paper. Yvette's handwriting. A list. Menu ideas. Cost breakdowns. A name circled twice in red ink. Nadia's table. That's her dream. A small cafe. Nothing fancy. A place where people feel at home. Good food, warm coffee, a seat for anyone who needs one. She's been building it in her head for 3 years. Every slow shift at the diner, she adds a detail. What the chairs would look like, what she'd put on the kids' menu, how the light would come through the front window in the morning. But right now, at 4:45 a.m., that dream feels very far away. She checks her phone. A notification from her school portal. Tuition payment reminder. $1,200 due in 9 days. She has $340 in her checking account. She closes the notification, doesn't even sigh. She's done this math before. She always figures it out. She just doesn't know how yet. She irons her uniform on a towel spread across the kitchen counter. The ironing board broke 2 months ago. She can't afford a new one. The towel works fine. At 5:30, she carries Nadia, still half asleep, wrapped in a blanket, across the hall to Janine Cole's apartment. Janine is her neighbor, her best friend, the person who holds her life together on days when the tape comes loose. Janine opens the door in a bathrobe, takes Nadia gently, doesn't ask questions she already knows the answers to. Double shift again? Yvette nods. Janine squeezes her hand. That's it. No lecture, no pity, just, I see you. I got you. Nadia stirs, eyes barely open. Mama, bring me pancakes? Yvette kisses her forehead. I'll try, baby. She walks to the bus stop. It's still dark out. The streetlights buzz that orange hum. She passes the laundromat, the corner store, the little church on Elm Street. There's a sign out front, one of those marquee boards with the plastic letters. It reads, Kindness costs nothing but means everything. She reads it every morning. Most days she walks right past. But today, something about today, she stops, reads it again, stands there for a second longer than usual. Then the bus comes, and she gets on. Rosie's Griddle. That's the diner. It's been around for 22 years, breakfast and lunch only. Famous for biscuits and bottomless coffee. The kind of place where regulars don't need menus and the cook knows your name. Dale Perkins owns it. 58. Big guy, rough hands, voice like gravel. Looks mean. Isn't. He hired Yvette 4 years ago when nobody else would because she had a gap on her resume. The 2 years she took off when Nadia was born. Table 6 is asking for you, Dale says when she walks in. Mrs. Henderson wants her eggs the way only you do 'em. Yvette ties her apron, grabs her notepad, starts her rounds. And this is the thing about Yvette. She remembers everyone. Table 6, Mrs. Henderson, scrambled soft with chives. Table 2, Gerald, black coffee, no sugar, extra napkins because he always spills. Table 9, the college kid who comes in every Thursday and only orders toast because that's all she can afford. Yvette always sneaks a side of bacon onto her plate. Doesn't charge her. She doesn't do it for tips. She does it because that's who she is. In the break room, before the rush, she sits for 60 seconds, takes her shoes off. The sole on the left one is splitting open. She pulls a strip of tape from the first aid kit and wraps it around the toe. A coworker notices. Girl, let me give you $20, get some new ones. Yvette shakes her head, smiles. I'm all right. Payday's Friday. She puts her shoes back on, tucks her notebook, the one with Nadia's table circled in red, into her apron pocket, and walks back out to serve people. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that in about 3 hours, 2 people were going to walk through that door. One would try to break her. The other would change her life forever. Now, here's where the day turns, because up until this point, it was just another Tuesday. Yvette had no idea that in the next 40 minutes, she'd meet 2 people who would change her life, one by tearing her down and one by lifting her up. The lunch rush hit hard. Every booth packed, every table turning. The kitchen was backed up, orders stacking, the bell dinging non-stop. And Yvette was covering extra tables because Megan, the other waitress on shift, called in sick 20 minutes before noon. So now it's just Yvette, alone on the floor, 14 tables, 1 pair of taped-up shoes. Dale was behind the grill, sweating, barking orders at the line cook. Pick it up, table 4's been waiting 11 minutes. Yvette moved fast. Refill on table 2, drop the check on table 7, clear table 12, smile, keep moving, don't stop. Then the door opened. A black SUV had pulled up outside. The kind with tinted windows and a driver who stays in the car. The kind you don't usually see parked outside Rosie's Griddle. Charles Whitmore walked in, 61 years old. Silver hair, clean shave, navy suit that cost more than Yvette's rent for 3 months. Bluetooth earpiece in, phone conversation still going. Voice loud enough that half the diner could hear him talking about quarterly projections and the meridian closing. He didn't wait to be seated. Didn't look at the sign that said, "Please wait to be seated." Just walked straight to a booth, sat down, and snapped his fingers in the air without looking up. Coffee, black, now. Yvette was mid-conversation with Mrs. Henderson. She excused herself, grabbed the coffee pot, walked over. Good afternoon, sir. Here's your coffee. Can I get you a menu, or do you know what you'd... Club sandwich, sourdough, no tomato, extra mustard, fast. He didn't look at her. Not once. She wrote it down. Every word. Sourdough, no tomato, extra mustard. She underlined sourdough twice. She always double-checked the details. Got it. I'll have that right out for you. Nothing. He was back on his phone. Now, right here, I need you to notice something. On the seat beside him, there was a leather portfolio, dark brown, expensive, and on the front, embossed in gold, W&G Holdings. Remember that, it matters later. Yvette walked the order to the kitchen, called it in clearly, moved on to the next table. And then, about 2 minutes later, the front door opened again. Quietly this time. An elderly woman stepped in, 74 maybe, white hair pinned back, wearing a beige cardigan, the kind your grandmother wears to church. Simple slacks, comfortable shoes, no makeup, no jewelry except a thin gold chain tucked inside her collar. You wouldn't look at her twice. She took the corner booth, the one by the window half hidden behind the coat rack. Yvette came over. "Hi there, ma'am. Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get you?" The woman smiled, warm, unhurried. "Just tea and toast, please. And take your time, sweetheart. I can see you're busy." Yvette felt something ease in her chest. After Charles Whitmore's finger snapping, this woman felt like a glass of cold water. "Coming right up." As she turned to leave, the woman said, "Yvette, that's a beautiful name." Yvette looked back, surprised. She'd forgotten she was wearing her name tag. "Thank you, ma'am. My grandmother picked it." She had good taste. Small moment, nothing dramatic, but something passed between them. The kind of recognition that doesn't need explanation. Now, here's what Yvette didn't see. When the old woman first sat down before Yvette came over, she glanced across the room at Charles Whitmore. Just for a second. And her expression changed. Not surprise, not anger, something quieter. Recognition. She knew exactly who he was. She angled her body slightly away from him, pulled her cardigan a little tighter. She didn't want to be seen. Not yet. And Yvette had no idea, no possible way of knowing, that these two people sitting in her section were connected. That the old woman in the cardigan and the man in the navy suit shared a last name on a company letterhead. That the quiet little lady ordering tea and toast held more power than anyone in this room. But that reveal is coming. And when it lands, trust me, it changes everything. For now, though, the kitchen bell dinged. Charles Whitmore's sandwich was up. And this is where it all falls apart. The plate came out from the kitchen. Club sandwich, extra mustard, no tomato, rye bread, not sourdough, rye. Yvette didn't make the sandwich. She wrote the order correctly. She always does. But the kitchen was slammed, the line cook was drowning, and somewhere between the ticket and the plate, sourdough became rye. She didn't even know yet. She picked up the plate, walked it over to booth 4, set it down with a smile. "Here you go, sir. Club sandwich, extra mustard, no tomato." He took one bite. And that's when everything exploded. What happened next? I've told a lot of stories on this channel, a lot. But this one? This is the one that made me pause. Charles Whitmore slammed the sandwich down so hard the plate cracked against the table. Coffee jumped out of his cup. The whole diner flinched. "What the hell is this?" Yvette turned around. "Sir?" "I said sourdough. This is rye. Are you deaf?" "I'm sorry, sir. Let me check the ticket. I'm sure I wrote—" "I don't care what you wrote. I care what's on my plate. And what's on my plate is wrong. Again. Because apparently basic instructions are too much for you." He stood up, full height, 6'1", looking down at her, voice getting louder with every word. "You know what your problem is? You don't listen. I said it clear. I said it slow. Sourdough. And you still couldn't get it right. What? Do I need to come back there and make it myself?" The diner was frozen. Every table, every booth. Forks down. Conversations dead. A kid in a high chair stared with wide eyes. His mother put her hand over his. Yvette's hands trembled. Just slightly, just enough that only she could feel it. But her voice didn't shake. Not once. "Sir, I apologize. I did write sourdough on the ticket. The kitchen made the error, and I take full responsibility. I'll have a new one out in 4 minutes." 4 minutes? I've already wasted 20 minutes in this dump. He looked around the room, playing to the audience, the way bullies do when they want witnesses. This is what you get at a place like this. This is what happens when people can't do the one job they have. He leaned in, lowered his voice, but not enough. Everyone still heard. "You're stupid. Just say it. Admit it. Say I'm stupid, and maybe I'll let you bring me the right sandwich." Dead silence. Yvette looked at him, right in his eyes. She didn't blink, didn't look away, didn't cry. Her jaw tightened for half a second, the only sign that those words landed where he aimed them. But she didn't say it. Dale Perkins came around the counter, towel over his shoulder, face red. "Sir, that's enough. I'm the owner. The meal is comped. I'm going to have to ask you to—" Yvette put her hand up gently. "Dale, it's okay. I got this." Dale stopped, looked at her like she was crazy, but he stepped back, because he trusted her. Because in 4 years, she'd never once lost her composure. Yvette turned back to Charles, and what she said next, this is the part that broke me. "Sir, you're right that the order came out wrong, and I'm sorry for that. Your meal is on me today. I'll pay for it out of my tips." Charles blinked. "Everyone has bad days. I don't know what yours looks like, but I hope the rest of it is better than this moment right here." She said it with zero sarcasm, zero anger. She meant it, every word. Then she picked up his plate, turned around, and walked to the kitchen. Charles sat down, slowly. The room exhaled, but nobody spoke. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, jaw tight. He didn't look up. And that should have been the end of it. Bad customer, gracious waitress, move on. Story over. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Because 2 minutes later, something happened in that corner booth. Eleanor, the old woman with the tea and toast, started coughing. Quiet at first, the kind of cough you wave away with your hand. Then harder, deeper, her whole body shaking with it. She reached for her tea. Her hand was trembling so badly she knocked the cup sideways. Tea spilled across the table, dripped onto the floor. She pressed her hand against her chest. Her breathing went thin, shallow. Her face lost color, fast. That warm pink faded to gray in seconds. Nobody noticed. The diner was still buzzing from the Charles scene. People were whispering to each other, shaking their heads, looking at their phones. Nobody noticed except Yvette. She was coming out of the kitchen with Charles's new sandwich. Sourdough this time, perfect. And she saw Eleanor. The trembling hand, the spilled tea, the color draining. She didn't hesitate, not for a single second. She set Charles's plate on the nearest table, not even his table, just the closest surface, and moved straight to Eleanor. Ma'am, are you okay? Look at me." Eleanor's eyes were glassy. She gripped the edge of the table. Her voice came out in a whisper. "My medication, in my purse, the blue bottle." Yvette grabbed the purse. Hands steady now, the same hands that trembled in front of Charles were rock solid. She found the bottle, opened it, shook one pill into her palm. "Slow breaths, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Eleanor's breathing was ragged. Her fingers were cold, but she held on to Yvette like an anchor. Dale called 911 from behind the counter. A few customers stood up, craning their necks, but Yvette didn't move, didn't look around for help, didn't panic. She stayed. For 10 minutes, she knelt on that floor, talking softly, rubbing Eleanor's hand, counting breaths with her. "That's good, ma'am. Another one. You're doing great. You're okay." Slowly, the color came back. Eleanor's breathing steadied, her grip loosened. She blinked, focused, looked at Yvette like she was seeing her for the first time. "Thank you, sweetheart." Her voice was barely there. "You didn't have to do that." Yvette smiled. "Yes, I did." That's all she said. 3 words, and she meant every single one. The paramedics arrived, checked Eleanor's vitals. She was stable. She declined transport. Stubborn, the way 74-year-old women are. "I'm fine, I just need a minute." Now, during all of this, Charles Whitmore was watching. He watched from his booth, silent. He watched the woman he'd screamed at, the one he called stupid, the one he tried to break, drop everything and save a stranger. He watched her kneel on a dirty floor and hold an old woman's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. And when Yvette finally came back to check on him, his new sandwich sitting cold on the wrong table, she picked it up and brought it to him. "I'm sorry for the wait, sir. I can remake this if it's cold." He waved his hand. "It's fine." His voice was quiet now, almost small. He left cash on the table, exact amount, no tip, and walked out without saying another word. No apology, no thank you, nothing. He just left. Charles Whitmore drove away in his black SUV thinking that was the last time he'd ever see that diner. The last time he'd ever think about that waitress. Just another Tuesday. Just another nobody. He was wrong. And Yvette? She had no idea that the quiet old woman she'd just held on a dirty floor wasn't just some grandmother out for tea. Not even close. After the paramedics left, Eleanor sat in her booth for a while. Quiet, hands folded, watching Yvette move through the diner like nothing had happened, refilling coffees, clearing plates, smiling at customers like she hadn't just been humiliated in front of all of them 20 minutes ago. Eleanor called her over. "Sweetheart, sit with me for a second." "Oh, ma'am, I can't. I've got tables and—" "Just 30 seconds, please." Yvette sat, just on the edge of the booth, ready to jump up the second Dale needed her. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a $100 bill, slid it across the table. "For what you did, please take it." Yvette shook her head, gently, not performatively, genuinely. "Ma'am, I can't accept that. You needed help, that's all that was. You paid for that man's meal out of your own tips. At least let me cover that." "It's okay, really. I've had worse days. He probably has too." Eleanor studied her. Not the way customers usually look at waitresses. Past them, through them. Eleanor looked at her the way you look at someone you're trying to understand, trying to measure. "That notebook in your apron," Eleanor said. "The one poking out. Earlier you told me you were dreaming on paper. What's the dream?" Yvette hesitated. She didn't talk about this with customers. Didn't talk about it with most people, actually. Dreams feel embarrassing when you're wearing taped-up shoes. But something about Eleanor's face, the patience in it, the stillness, made her answer. "A cafe, small, nothing crazy, a place where people feel like they belong. Good food, fair prices. I want to name it after my daughter." "What's her name?" "Nadia." "Nadia's Table," Eleanor said. Not a question, like she was tasting the words. "Yeah," Yvette smiled. "A real one. The first real one all day." "Nadia's Table." Eleanor leaned forward. "Have you written a business plan?" Yvette blinked. Nobody had ever asked her that before. People usually said, "That's nice," or "Good luck with that." Nobody asked about a business plan. "I mean, kind of. I've got numbers, cost breakdowns, menu ideas. It's not official or anything, it's just—" "It's a start," Eleanor said. "That's more than most people ever do." She reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a small leather card case. Old, worn soft at the edges. She took out one card and slid it across the table, face down. "If you ever want to talk more about that dream, seriously talk about it, you call this number." Yvette took the card, slipped it into her apron pocket without looking at it. The lunch rush was still going. Table 9 needed a refill. Table 3's check was overdue. She didn't have time to read business cards. "Thank you, ma'am. I really hope you feel better." Eleanor smiled. "I already do." A moment later, a man appeared at the front door. Dark suit, professional. He held the door open for Eleanor and walked her to a black town car parked half a block down the street. Not a taxi, not an Uber, a town car, with a driver. Yvette noticed, but only barely. She was already back at table 9 with the coffee pot. That night, after her double shift, Yvette picked up Nadia from Janine's, made mac and cheese, helped Nadia finish a coloring page, a purple horse with wings, read her a bedtime story, waited until she fell asleep. Then she did laundry. And when she pulled her apron out of the pile, something fell onto the floor. The business card. She picked it up, flipped it over. Eleanor Graves, founding partner, Whitmore and Graves Holdings. Yvette stared at it, read it again, then one more time. She grabbed her phone, Googled the name. Her eyes went wide. She stood in her tiny kitchen for a long time, holding a business card in one hand and her phone in the other. Then she walked to the fridge, stuck the card under the cupcake magnet, right next to Nadia's stick figure drawing, right next to Nadia's Table, circled in red, and went to bed. Now, while Yvette was lying in bed staring at the ceiling trying to make sense of a name she'd never heard before, something else was happening across town. Something that Charles Whitmore had absolutely no idea was about to destroy everything he'd spent 30 years building. Eleanor's town car pulled into the private entrance of the Ballantine, one of Charlotte's most expensive hotels. She walked through the lobby like any other guest. No entourage, no assistant, just an old woman in a cardigan. She stepped into her suite, closed the door, sat down in the armchair by the window, and then, slowly, like a ritual, she unclasped the thin gold chain around her neck, the one that had been tucked inside her collar all day. She held the pendant up to the light, a small gold emblem, 2 letters intertwined, W and G, the same logo embossed on Charles Whitmore's leather portfolio, the same logo on the building downtown, the same logo on every contract, every letterhead, every press release for the last 30 years. Her company, her letters, her empire. She set the pendant on the table, picked up the hotel phone, dialed. "Richard, it's Eleanor. I need an emergency board meeting scheduled. Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp."
A pause on the other end.
Her attorney. "And Richard, pull the Meridian Harbor contract, all of it, every page. I'm not signing." "Eleanor," his voice was careful. "That's a $1.2 billion deal. Charles has spent 18 months. I know exactly what Charles has spent, and I know exactly who Charles is. That's the problem." She hung up. No small talk, no second guessing. Done. She opened her phone, scrolled to her photos. There, taken quietly in the diner when nobody was looking, a single photo. Yvette kneeling on the floor beside her booth, holding her hand, mouth mid-sentence, counting breaths together. Eleanor looked at it for a long time. Then she set the phone down and turned off the light. Meanwhile, 12 miles across the city, Charles Whitmore sat in his corner office on the 32nd floor. Glass walls, skyline view, a desk the size of a dining table. He was on the phone, laughing, confident, talking about Friday's signing like it was already done. His son Russell sat across from him, 34, VP of Operations. Quiet. The kind of quiet that means he's thinking things he can't say out loud. "Eleanor will sign Friday," Charles said, hanging up the phone. "She always signs. 30 years. That woman has never said no to me." Russell shifted in his chair. "Dad, are you sure? She's been different lately." Charles waved his hand. "She's 74. She's tired. She'll sign." But she wasn't tired. She was done. Friday came, and what happened inside that boardroom didn't just end a deal. It ended an empire. Whitmore and Graves Holdings, 32nd floor, downtown Charlotte. Conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, a mahogany table long enough to seat 18, and a view of the city that made everyone in the room feel like they owned it. Charles Whitmore sat at the head of the table, portfolio open, pen ready, smiling the way a man smiles when he thinks the world is about to hand him exactly what he wants. The Meridian Harbor deal, a massive waterfront development, luxury condos, retail space, a boutique hotel. 18 months of negotiations, $1.2 billion on the line, the biggest deal in the company's history. All it needed was one signature, Eleanor's. Russell sat to his right, quiet, leg bouncing under the table. He hadn't slept well. He couldn't explain why. Board members filtered in, 7 of them, dark suits, leather folders, small talk about golf and quarterly earnings. Then Eleanor walked in, and the room shifted. She wasn't wearing the cardigan, not today. Today it was a charcoal blazer, tailored, pearl earrings, hair pinned with precision. She looked like what she was, the woman who built this company from a single office and a handshake 33 years ago. She didn't look tired. She didn't look old. She looked like someone who had made a decision and wasn't interested in discussing it. Charles stood up, big smile, arms open. "Eleanor, looking wonderful as always. Can I get you a coffee before we—" "Sit down, Charles." 2 words. The room went cold. Charles laughed, nervous. "Okay, straight to business then. I like it. Let's get this signed and we can all—" "There's nothing to sign." He stopped, smile frozen. I'm sorry? Eleanor sat down, opened a folder, placed both hands flat on the table. I am not signing the Meridian Harbor contract. Not today, not next week, not ever. Silence. The kind of silence that sounds like ringing. A board member at the far end cleared his throat. Eleanor, is there a concern with the terms? We can renegotiate the... This isn't about terms. She looked around the table, slowly, making eye contact with every person in the room. This is about character. She turned to Charles, and she began to talk. She described a diner, a Tuesday afternoon, a packed lunch rush at a little place called Rosie's Griddle. She described a man in a suit, she didn't say his name, not yet, standing over a waitress, a black waitress, snapping his fingers at her, telling her she was stupid, demanding she say it out loud, humiliating her in front of 30 people over a sandwich. She described the waitress's response, how she didn't yell, didn't cry, how she apologized for something that wasn't her fault, how she offered to pay for his meal out of her own tips. And then, Eleanor said, that same waitress, the one this man had just tried to break, she saved my life. The room was absolutely still. I had a cardiac episode. In the corner booth, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't reach my medication, and that young woman dropped everything, found my pills, knelt on a dirty floor, held my hand and talked me through it for 10 minutes. She refused payment. She refused a tip. She told me, and I'll never forget this, you needed help. That's all that was. Eleanor paused, let it sit. Then she looked directly at Charles. The man in the suit was you, Charles. Every head in the room turned. Charles's face drained. Not slowly, all at once, like someone pulled a plug. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He saw it now. The corner booth, the cardigan, the tea and toast, the old woman he'd barely glanced at. He'd been so busy performing for the room that he never even looked at who was sitting in it. Eleanor continued. Her voice was steady, almost gentle, which made it worse. I built this company on a principle. One principle. How you treat people when you have power tells me everything about who you are. I've watched you for 30 years, Charles. I've made excuses. I've looked the other way. I'm not looking away anymore. She closed her folder. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing my 62% ownership stake from all active projects. The Meridian Harbor contract requires my signature to release financing. That signature will not come. Without financing, the deal collapses. Without the deal, she paused. Well, you know the math better than I do. Charles found his voice, barely. You can't do this. I'll call legal. I'll... Call them. Eleanor didn't blink. My attorneys are already on it, and Charles, mine are better. A long, terrible silence. Then Russell stood up. Everyone looked at him. His father, the board, Eleanor. Russell looked at Charles, then at Eleanor. His hands were shaking, but his voice wasn't. She's right, Dad. Charles. Sit down, Russell. No, Russell turned to Eleanor. Whatever you need from me to make this transition work, I'm available. Charles looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to back him up. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. One by one, the board members closed their folders. Eleanor stood up, straightened her blazer. This meeting is adjourned. She walked out. The room emptied, slowly, quietly, the way people leave a funeral. Charles sat alone at the head of the table, in the building with his name on it, under the logo he'd treated like it was his, W&G Holdings. It was never his, it was always hers. He just forgot. Within 48 hours, the news broke. Financial outlets ran it everywhere. Whitmore and Graves founder pulls funding after CEO misconduct. $1.2 billion deal collapses. Partners pulled out. Investors panicked. The company's leveraged debt, the kind you can only carry when the next big deal is guaranteed, became a noose. 90 days later, Whitmore and Graves Holdings filed for bankruptcy. Charles Whitmore was removed as CEO by the board. The man who told a waitress to say, "I'm stupid," couldn't even save his own company. Over bread. But here's the thing. This story was never about a CEO losing everything. That's just the part that feels satisfying, the part your brain wants to replay. And I get it. But the real story, the one that actually matters, it's about what happened to Yvette. 3 weeks passed after the diner incident. 21 days. And in those 21 days, Yvette's life looked exactly the same. Double shifts, bus rides in the dark, mac and cheese for dinner, studying between 10 p.m. and midnight, taping her shoes together every morning. The business card was still on the fridge, under the cupcake magnet. She looked at it every day, sometimes twice, but she never called. Because, and this is important, Yvette didn't think it was real. Rich people don't give waitresses their phone number and mean it. That's not how the world works. Not her world. She'd learned that lesson a long time ago, so she didn't call. Then one night, a Thursday around 9 p.m., Nadia was asleep. Yvette was at the folding table, laptop open, working on a paper for her business strategy class. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Charlotte area code. She almost didn't answer. She gets spam calls every day. Warranty extensions, insurance scams, you know the drill. But something, gut feeling, instinct, exhaustion making her careless, she picked up. Hello? Yvette, this is Eleanor Graves. We met at the diner. You held my hand. Yvette's pen dropped, hit the floor. She didn't pick it up. Oh my, Mrs. Graves, are you okay? Are you feeling better? Eleanor laughed. Soft, warm. The kind of laugh that puts you at ease without trying. I'm fine, dear. Better than fine. Thank you for asking, though I should have expected that would be the first thing out of your mouth. Yvette smiled. Couldn't help it. I'm calling because I'd like to talk to you about that cafe you mentioned. Nadia's Table. If the dream is still alive, I'd love to hear more about it. Yvette's hand was shaking. She sat down on the edge of her bed, then stood up, then sat down again. Mrs. Graves, yes, the dream is still... I think about it every day, but I don't... Can you come see me Saturday morning? I'll send a car. A car? 10 a.m. I'll text you the address. And Yvette, bring that notebook. She hung up. Yvette sat in the dark holding her phone for a long time. Then she walked to the fridge, looked at the business card, looked at Nadia's stick figure drawing and whispered, Baby, your mama might be losing her mind. Saturday morning, 10 a.m. A black town car picked Yvette up outside her apartment building. Janine watched from the window, jaw on the floor. Nadia waved from Janine's arms like her mom was leaving on a spaceship. The car drove 25 minutes outside Charlotte, past the suburbs, past the strip malls, into a neighborhood where the houses sat far apart and the lawns looked like golf courses. But Eleanor's house wasn't a mansion. That surprised Yvette. It was a big house, sure, beautiful, but it looked like someone actually lived there. Books stacked on the porch, a garden out front, tomatoes, herbs, sunflowers leaning sideways, wind chimes on the railing. Eleanor met her at the door, cardigan and all. Come in, sweetheart, I made tea. They sat in the living room, and over tea, the same kind Eleanor ordered at the diner, same cup, same slow sip, Eleanor told Yvette who she was. Not the business card version, the real version. How she started Whitmore and Graves 33 years ago with a $40,000 loan and a belief that commercial real estate could be built on relationships, not just contracts. How she grew it into a $2 billion company. How she stepped back 10 years ago to let Charles run the day-to-day. A decision she'd regretted for at least 5 of those years. And then I walked into your diner, Eleanor said, and I watched the CEO of my company call a woman stupid for a piece of bread. And I watched that same woman save my life 10 minutes later. She set down her tea. Yvette, I've spent 40 years building things. I know what leadership looks like. I know what character looks like. And you showed me more of both in 10 minutes than Charles showed me in a decade. Yvette's eyes were burning. She blinked fast, held it together, barely. Eleanor laid it out. Not as charity. She said that word specifically. This is not charity. And Yvette needed to hear it. A formal investment partnership. Eleanor would fund the full build-out of Nadia's Table, lease, renovation, kitchen equipment, interior design, initial staff, opening inventory. Total investment, $250,000. In return, Eleanor takes a small equity stake as a silent partner. No interference, no micromanaging, just capital and connections. Additionally, and this is where Yvette broke, Eleanor had already set up an educational trust for Nadia. Full tuition, elementary through college. Done. Yvette put her hand over her mouth. Tears came. She didn't try to stop them this time. Mrs. Graves, this is too much. I can't. Yes, you can. Eleanor reached across the table and held her hand, the same way Yvette had held hers on that diner floor. You're not a charity case, Yvette. You're the best investment I've ever made, and I've made a lot of them. 2 weeks later, Russell Whitmore called, Charles's son, the one who stood up in the boardroom. He apologized. Not the corporate kind, the real kind, the kind that costs something to say. What my father did was inexcusable. I can't undo it, but I'd like to help if you'll let me. Pro bono, operational consulting, lease negotiation, vendor setup, whatever you need. Yvette was cautious. She didn't trust the name Whitmore. Not yet. Trust isn't given, it's built. But Russell showed up. Week after week, he answered every question, did the unglamorous work, never asked for credit. And slowly, carefully, Yvette let him in. And what happened next didn't just change Yvette's life, it changed an entire neighborhood. 6 months. That's all it took. 6 months from the phone call to the grand opening. And every single day of those 6 months, Yvette worked like she had something to prove. Because she did. To herself. The space was a gutted retail unit on West Boulevard, a stretch of Charlotte that most investors had written off years ago. Empty storefronts, faded for lease signs, the kind of block people drive past without looking. Yvette looked. She saw a front window that faced east, morning light pouring in just like she'd always imagined. She saw enough square footage for 12 tables, a counter with stools, and a kitchen big enough to actually cook in. She saw home. Eleanor saw it too. This is the one, she said, standing in the middle of the empty room, dust floating in the sunlight. Build it here. And so she did. The renovation was loud, messy, and beautiful. Yvette was on site every day she wasn't working at Rosie's Griddle. Hard hat, paint-stained jeans, learning how to read contractor bids and negotiate with equipment suppliers, things her business classes taught her in theory but never in practice. Russell handled the lease negotiation, got her a 5-year term with an option to renew at a locked rate. He never told her how many calls that took. She never asked. Nadia helped too, in her own way. She drew the kids' menu illustrations, a smiling pancake, a dancing cup of orange juice, a grilled cheese with sunglasses. Yvette had them printed and laminated. They became the most popular thing in the restaurant before it even opened. And somewhere in the middle of all this, between the construction and the chaos, Yvette finished her degree. 18 credits. Done. Janine took the photo, cap and gown, Nadia on her hip, both of them grinning so hard it looked like their faces might crack. Yvette posted it on her fridge next to the business card and the stick figure drawing. The fridge was getting crowded. Opening day, a Saturday morning in October, bright and cool. A banner across the front window, Nadia's table, grand opening. The line went out the door and down the sidewalk before 8 a.m. The whole neighborhood came. People who'd lived on that block for 30 years and watched every business come and go. People who'd never had a reason to stop on West Boulevard before. People who heard about it from a friend, a cousin, a post online. Dale Perkins was there, standing in line like everyone else. When he got to the front, he shook Yvette's hand with both of his. His eyes were wet. You were always too good for my diner. I knew it the day I hired you. Eleanor cut the ribbon. She wore the beige cardigan, the same one from the diner. Yvette noticed. Their eyes met across the crowd and something passed between them, a whole conversation in a single look. No words needed. Local news covered the opening. Camera crew, reporter, the whole thing. The segment ran that evening. From waitress to owner, Charlotte woman opens community cafe after life-changing encounter. But Nadia's table wasn't just a cafe. Not to Yvette. She built 3 things into the foundation. 3 promises she made to herself before the doors ever opened. First plate free. Anyone who walks in hungry and can't pay eats a full meal. No questions, no judgment, no paperwork. Just food. Second shift scholars. A scholarship fund for service workers going back to school, funded by a percentage of monthly profits, matched dollar for dollar by Eleanor's foundation. The first recipient was a 22-year-old line cook from Dale's Diner who wanted to be a nurse. Third, open notebook nights. Once a month after closing, Yvette opens the cafe to aspiring small business owners. Free coffee, free advice. She brings out her notebook, the same one with Nadia's table circled in red, and walks them through everything she learned. The hard parts, the scary parts, the parts nobody tells you about. People started coming from across the city for those nights, then from across the state. And Charles Whitmore? Whitmore and Graves completed bankruptcy proceedings 94 days after Eleanor pulled her stake. Charles lost his position, his reputation, and most of his personal wealth. A business journal reported he'd taken a consulting role at a small firm outside Raleigh. Nobody called him for comment. The story doesn't dwell on him. It doesn't need to. The contrast tells itself. But there's one more moment. The one I keep coming back to. The one that, honestly, I can't get out of my head. 6 months after opening. A rainy Tuesday afternoon. The kind of rain that empties sidewalks and turns streetlights into blurry halos. Nadia's table was quiet. Just a few regulars. Yvette was behind the counter wiping down the espresso machine, humming something Nadia had taught her. A song from a cartoon she'd already forgotten the name of. The door opened. A gust of wet air came in first. Then a young man, black, mid-20s, wearing a security guard uniform, the kind with the clip-on badge and the too-big shirt, soaking wet, shoes squeaking on the tile. He sat at the counter, didn't look at the menu for long. He already knew what he could afford. "Can I get a cup of the soup, please?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out a handful of coins, started counting them on the counter. Quarters, dimes, a few nickels, arranging them in little stacks like he'd done this before. Yvette watched him. Not obviously, just from the corner of her eye while she ladled the soup. And she saw it. All of it. The wet uniform, the coin stacks, the way he held his shoulders, pulled in tight like he was trying to take up less space, the way he didn't make eye contact, like he was embarrassed to be hungry. She saw herself, 2 years ago, different counter, same math. She brought him the soup, set it down gently. Then she went back to the kitchen and came out with a full plate. Biscuits, fried chicken, collard greens, a tall glass of sweet tea. She set it in front of him. He looked up, confused. "I didn't order all this." Yvette smiled. "I know. It's on me." "Ma'am, I don't have enough for—" "You don't need enough. It's on me." He stared at the plate, then at her. His jaw tightened. He nodded once, slowly. "Thank you." He ate, quietly. And somewhere between the biscuits and the sweet tea, he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Quick, hoping nobody saw. Yvette saw. She didn't say anything. When he left, she cleared his spot. And underneath the empty plate, folded neatly, was a napkin. He'd written on it in pen, "Thank you. I was having the worst day of my life. You made me feel like I mattered." Yvette read it twice. Then she walked to the wall behind the register, the wall that was becoming a kind of altar, and taped it up. Right next to Eleanor's business card, right next to Nadia's stick figure drawing, right next to the notebook page with Nadia's table circled in red. That Tuesday, a regular came in, same corner booth, tea and toast. Eleanor sat down. Yvette brought it without being asked. Same order, same warmth. Eleanor looked around the cafe. Full tables, laughter, rain tapping on the window, the smell of biscuits and coffee. "You built something beautiful, Yvette." Yvette looked at the wall, the business card, the drawing, the napkin, the notebook page. A whole life pinned up with tape and magnets. We did.
Before you scroll,
And that's the story.
was never
But
about
before you
a
scroll,
CEO losing
I gotta be real
everything.
with you for a second.
That's just karma. A real story. A woman knelt on a dirty floor and held a stranger's hand, not knowing who that stranger was, not expecting anything in return. No camera, no audience, no calculation. Charles Whitmore spent 30 years building an empire. It collapsed in 90 days. Yvette spent 30 minutes being kind, and it built something that will outlast anything he ever touched. Because your character isn't what you show the boardroom, it's what you show the waitress when you think nobody important is watching. And somebody is always watching. 30 people heard every word in that dinner. Not one stood up. So here's my question. Does kindness only matter when someone powerful is watching? And what does it say about us when we stay silent? Tell me in the comments. If this hit you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it today. Our last video, a mother told she'd never see her children again, and she did next left the courtroom in tears. Right here, a napkin on a cafe wall. You made me feel like I mattered. That's the whole point.